We do want to share some sad news from the CFL. A Saskatchewan Roughrider player has been shot dead in New Orleans, Louisiana. 28-year-old Joe McKnight was a running back for the team. He's been with the Roughriders since September after starting the season with Edmonton. Now, before the CFL, McKnight, originally from Louisiana, played in the NFL. All right, let's bring in Colonel John Fortunato from the Public Information Office in the Jefferson Parish Sheriff's Department. Thanks for joining us today.
Yes, good evening. How are you?
Good, thank you. Tell me about the circumstances of this shooting, please.
Well, it happened around 2:43 p.m. this afternoon. Our 911 center received a call of a subject who was shot in Terrytown near the intersection of Holmes Boulevard and Berman Highway. When the first responding officers arrived on the scene, they immediately began performing CPR on the victim, who was identified as Joe McKnight, a 28-year-old black male. He's believed to live in the Kenner, Louisiana area. And yes, he was a former CFL football star, as well as he played for the Kansas City Chiefs. Anyhow, it's being investigated as a road rage incident at this point. And what we know for sure is that the shooter in this matter, identified as Ronald Gasser, a white male, 54 years of age, he apparently stayed on the scene, surrendered his weapon, and was taken into custody, and is currently being questioned by members of our homicide division as to what actually took place or what led up to the shooting. But Gasser was taken into custody and is being questioned at this point. Mr. McKnight was pronounced dead on the scene of multiple gunshot wounds.
So he was shot more than once?
Yes.
Okay. And can you tell me, did this happen then on the road in the middle of an intersection? Had they pulled over? Can you give me a better idea of the scene?
It was actually near a very busy four-lane intersection, especially that time of the day. And when Mr. McKnight, or actually when our officers arrived on the scene, Mr. McKnight's vehicle was parallel to Gasser's vehicle, and Mr. McKnight was laying on the ground between both vehicles. He did not have a weapon on him or near him at the time of his death.
Were both of these drivers alone in the car, or did they have passengers?
No, ma'am. They only had single occupancy in both vehicles, and they both were headed in a westerly direction, had just actually come out of the city of New Orleans and crossed over the boundary line between Orleans Parish and Jefferson Parish.
You had mentioned that Mr. McKnight we know he's from Louisiana. How far away was this from his home? Can you give us an idea of that?
I would probably say about 20 miles. In the airport, I don't know exactly where he lived in the city of Kenner, but the Louis Armstrong International Airport is actually in Kenner. So if you use the airport as a reference point, it was about 20 miles from his home, I would say.
And you mentioned that he'd been shot a couple of times. Do we know how many times he was shot and where he was shot?
No, I do not know that. They won't be able to make that determination until they conduct an autopsy on Mr. McKnight tomorrow. The autopsy will be performed by the Jefferson Parish Coroner's Office. So, no, ma'am, I do not have that information as far as how many times, nor do I know where he actually was physically shot at.
And why do you believe this to be a road rage incident? Is this coming from the suspect or from other witnesses?
It's basically coming from the suspect who's being interviewed at this time. We were hoping to find someone. In fact, if you look at the news release that I put out earlier this evening, we were making an appeal to anyone who may have seen any type of altercation that could have taken place between these two parties. But thus far, we haven't received any information along those lines. But it looks as though, based on the position of the vehicles, the direction that they were traveling, that at some point in time, Mr. McKnight got out of his vehicle, and that's when the shooting occurred.
Sir, do you have a problem with road rage in that area, in the New Orleans area?
Well, as you well know, NFL star Will Smith was killed actually in the city of New Orleans when during a road rage incident that was similar in nature. But we don't know what led up to this particular incident. But the Will Smith incident was a lot more. They had a lot more details. They had more witnesses. There were a lot of other parties in the vehicles involved. But in this particular situation with Mr. McKnight, no, ma'am, we do not have any other information, and we're hoping that someone come forward and provide that information to us that would be helpful in our investigation.
Colonel John Fortunato from the Public Information Office, Jefferson Parish Sheriff's Department. Sir, thank you for joining us. I appreciate that.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.